Hello, guys, and welcome to Crusher Convo, where we're crushing the conversation one episode at a time. Tonight, we are visited by demigods, geometric shapes, and a cat fight to the death. Yes, I am talking about episode 6 of Star Trek Lower Deck's final season of Gods and Angles. I'm very sorry how I sound. I've been sick all week. I'm extremely exhausted, but I thought I'll go ahead and go live and we'll get through this together. It was an interesting episode, probably not a favorite of mine. Not a horrible episode, to say the least, but definitely not one that I was really getting into, right? So let's go ahead and show a clip of the episode.
Almost got it. Who said I couldn't stack 100 pieces of circular furniture onto a single sled?
I did. And it wasn't a challenge. It was an order.
Don't worry. I inverted the weight threshold. This bad boy could hold a friggin' neutron star.
So I guess Ollie, Ensign Ollie, who we saw there in the clip, she is supposed to be the descendant of Zeus, which is where we saw, it wasn't even Zeus, that's Apollo, on Star Trek, who mourns for Andonius. Okay. I think I've seen the episode once, and all I remember was that Apollo being ginormous and something about a green hand snagging the Enterprise from orbit, which we did see in the new opening credits, the green hand. And so we were curious. We were like, I wonder if they're actually going to be, hinting to this episode. And here it is. So like I said, it was a very interesting episode. I don't know if you guys saw, I just noticed this as I was playing the clip back. I saw the stack of furniture that she had. One was that really weird wharf chair with the little balls and stuff. There's an Easter egg there for you guys. But yeah, it was clearly I can't say she's up to no good. She clearly was trying to please Ransom by going against his order. She was trying to prove herself right, I'm not a problem. I can help. Honestly, we see her later on, and she's she mentions how much she's into engineering, and that was her gift, right? It wasn't that the fact that she had powers, it was because she was really good in engineering. Oh, hi Chuck, how are you? I hope you're feeling okay. So yeah, thank you for joining me tonight. I'm trying to do my best right now, as I got a throat lozenge, I got my water, got my meds, we're good. So there was a few things that I did want to mention. First, again, little confusion. That was Apollo. She mentioned she's a granddaughter or daughter of Zeus. I can't remember now, but I think she's a daughter of Zeus. No mention about who her mom was. So, who knows? I think what was funny is that so this was the A plot, the whole Ensign Ollie with the orbs and the cubes and the whole disagreement and everything. The B plot was Boimler with the red pad and trying to get Dr. Tiana to like him. And I thought that was more interesting because I was so excited to see Tiana. We really haven't seen her. This was like the first time in the first 6 episodes that we actually got a lot of her on screen. Other times she was either just like in the background, she barely meowed at some point, maybe she had a line, but nothing really focusing on Tiana. And this is, of course, Boimler's story, but she was the focus because he was trying to get her to like him and give him a nickname because he was following that red pad, which was from the alternate Boimler. Oh, Chuck says, I had a PET CT scan. No lymphoma shown. Yay. Most likely in remission. Still will have my last 4 chemotherapy sessions. That is wonderful news, Chuck. I am so happy to hear that. I know you've been dealing with this for quite some time, and I even reshared your GoFundMe on my Twitter page, which is now private, but I still have a lot of, you know, Star Trek fans there. So I'm really, really happy for you. So yay for Chuck. If I had a little clapping sound, I would add that. Maybe I would do that for, post, and it'll be in the audio version. But yay, that's very exciting news. I'm so happy for him. Chuck's amazing. He supports so many different Star Trek podcasts, and, follows the actors and the creators and all that stuff. So very, very cool. And he says, "Thank you so much." You're very welcome. So back to the episode. I'm going to actually check Instagram real fast so I don't forget. Okay. I have my mom joining me. Hello, Mom. And talking about Trek podcast. So hello. Thank you for watching this and hearing me a little nasally, but hopefully we're good. Okay. So the whole thing with Boimler, he wants to try and get Tiana to join her book club, but she gives him a nickname, and he feels, if I continue on this path, I'll become that Boimler that I saw. Okay. And so he's trying to do everything he can to try and get her to do it. However, he's at the Boimler stage of bugging, right? And she's not too thrilled about it. Rutherford and Tendi were both like, "Oh yeah, we noticed you with this weird pad that was from the alternate Boimler." And the only reason why they knew it was because it had like a 3-point something bevel, like thicker bevel or something. And he's like, "But the pad's red." And they're like, "Oh yeah." And they both didn't even notice that, right? Such a Rutherford and Tendi thing. But he was so obsessed to try and follow it like step by step. He wasn't really understanding of, well, why did Tiana gave him the flip name, right? Maybe the alternate Boimler really enjoyed books, and he talked to her about books and the way he'd read it, and that's why. But Boimler wasn't thinking about that. He was just like, "I just need her to get me to, give me that nickname." So you can see Boimler just really struggling with how to figure this out. While he's trying to deal with this, we have Ensign Ollie, who we saw. Everyone's having trouble with this ensign. And of course, Mariner feels like, hey, I can help her. Okay. I was a troubled ensign. Everyone wanted to give up on me. I'm going to do my part. And even at some point, either Captain Freeman wanted to move her on to another ship, just like they've been doing. And of course, we didn't really understand, like even in that scene, we saw the shock and it had that, bike take off. But I just thought malfunction. Okay. This girl just has, was it Murphy's Law? Like just following around, black cloud. She just literally the worst luck ever. In reality, she was her own worst luck. She was her own worst enemy because she just kept making bad choices. And it just became worse, right? Because she was trying so hard to hide that she was a demigod and that she had powers, that she didn't even realize that she was causing her own problems. Okay. And now the whole roaring fractions between the two, which was, this is the angles part of the title, the orbs and the cubes. Okay. And they don't like each other because one has edges and the other one is too smooth. And, they didn't like section 10 of the treating because it was too round, and they didn't like the edges of the ship. And Freeman was freaking out because she's like, how do I get rid of that? So it's just like another TNG type moment where they're trying to get these two worlds to have a peace treating. And of course, one of them disappears. I literally picked it up so quickly when that first, I think it was the cube that disappeared. And they were all like, we're trying to find him. And then they thought he was murdered because they saw his residue on the wall. And I instantly was like, oh, he's hiding. Like there's a reason that he's hiding. And I even thought, well, maybe he's probably fallen in love with an orb. And this was before we heard the girl orb was missing, the daughter. And so I kind of clocked it because that's just an old trope, you know. They even did it on Xena. I mentioned it on my cause and effect episode with Patrick. I had mentioned that Xena's day was repeating itself because there were two families at war, and but one of each fell in love, and then there was this whole thing. This is literal. This, I'm sure there's so many movies, books, all. This is it, right? So I kind of clocked that real fast, but I was still trying to figure out how Ollie fit into all of it, right? Because personally, for me, I don't think Ollie was needed. I think it was just more of nostalgia in the sense that they were bringing her back, or not even bringing her back. They were bringing her in to showcase this TOS episode, right? Which is fine. I mean, there was nothing wrong with it. It wasn't like she was a bad part of the story. I just think that they could have done it without Ollie. But also, I think they were also doing it because um, it was also part of Mariner's story, right? They're really trying to show how different she is and how she's really trying to make amends with her family and the crew and doing what Starfleet does. And so this was her time to shine because she was always the one, changing ships, being in the brig, all that stuff, and now it's her, her turn to help someone. So I understand that aspect, but I just wasn't a huge fan of Ollie, and maybe it's because I'm not a huge fan of that TOS episode. Literally saw it once, and I guys, I'm a Greek mythology fanatic. Okay, if you did not know about that about me, I love Greek mythology. It's all because of Xena, but and Roman mythology, but it's very interesting to me. Absolutely love it. Love the constellations, the whole 9 yards. Couldn't really get into it in the original series. So, but that's just because it's Star Trek and it was campy and whatever. But even with this, I'm just like, all right, it was cool. It was fine. It wasn't, it's probably not an episode that I would go and like purposely watch again, but I wouldn't turn it off if it was on, if it was playing. Right. So, um, let me see here. So when they were noticing that residue, Mariner and Ollie bring in the captain, Ransom, I think Shax was there, and they were trying to figure out what had happened. And Mariner mentioned Dixon Hill. Okay, so it was her way of just being like, oh, this is another, even Dixon Hill will have trouble with this one, right? Because they just weren't sure if foul play was involved, but then they didn't want to like cause any problems because these two entities were already causing problems, right? So, oh, my mother says hello, hello. So, anyways, I think that's where it was kind of like, okay, how do we process this without causing more problems? Well, then that's where Ollie plays into it. She's the one that caused the problems. As they were trying to find more evidence and figure out what was going on, they decided to talk to this orb. And it's funny because I'm not really 100% sure why they wanted to talk with this particular orb, but they decided to do like the good cop, bad cop with it. And it was funny because he was kind of saying, he was like, I'm actually for the trading. Like, I really want this to happen. But Ollie was so quick to judge. She just ruined all of it. But there was a reason why she ruined it, which we found out later. Chuck, Jesse, I think this is a Mike McMahon callback. She is wearing a laurel and her name is Ollie. It has got to be a callback to Stan Laurel and Oliver Hardy. Oh, this is why Chuck's in the chat. I'm running with it, Chuck. I'm just gonna. It's now canon. Okay, I don't care if it wasn't, but it's now canon. Okay, Laurel and Hardy. That's, you know what? Now it just makes it even more interesting when you figure out how much of an Easter egg is into this episode. if that's true, Chuck, that is a good one. But and actually, if you wanna hear really a deep cut, everyone it took people a few times when they heard this. It took me a few times for sure. When Boimler was talking to Rutherford, okay, and he was pretending he did not know about that red pad. He was like, "What are you talking about?" He says, "Oh, you're a like a regular Ronald B. Moore. You're so funny," or something like that, throwing jokes, something like that. I listened to that, and at first I thought he said Ronald D. Moore, who of course is a writer for, a very famous writer of Star Trek, and who went on to Voyager and all that. And then it was like, oh no, 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 he said B. Moore. And then I realized I was like, oh yeah, there's two Ronalds, and had to remember. I was like, okay, so Ronald B. Moore was the special effects supervisor, and he's literally from the very first episode of TNG to the very last episode of Enterprise. He was there that whole time. And so I'm like, okay, that's interesting. I was like, but why would they say that he was a comedian? If he was supposed to be, he's a special effects guy, right? So deep cut, I went and Googled Memory Alpha, really. And actually, Lori from Truck Movie did the exact same thing because I was like, what is going on? And the outrageous Okana in season 2, and this is why I didn't catch it because it's season 2. There was that moment where Data wanted to be funny and he was talking with Guinan and they went in the holodeck and they got that comedian. Okay. Apparently that comedian was Ronald B. Moore. So that's what Boimler was referring to. And I'm all, oh my gosh, that's again, deep, deep cut. That is like far back in the atmosphere. And he just plucked it out and just like, we're going to use this. So, yes, Chuck said, fantastic deep cut, very much so. But I was all like, oh man. And I didn't even realize that they named the comedian. I know he wasn't a real comedian, it was an actor. But yeah, I wasn't paying attention. Again, it was season 2. I was only trying to just get through it so I could say that I saw all of TNG. But back to Ollie. Okay, so yeah, they were talking with the orb. Ollie was a bit much. Mariner is like, what the heck? And when they're trying to figure out this whole thing, the orbs in the cubes are getting worse and worse. And then that's all hell broke loose. Okay. And so, because Ollie's just like, oh yeah, he had to have been murdered, and that just set everyone off. And then they started fighting and things were happening. And prior to this happening, when Boimler was trying to get Tiana to like him, he decided, oh, I'm going to talk in her language, which instead of thinking was the, what is her species? Kiation? I should have written this down. I failed. We'll just blame the cold meds. And there he was like, oh no. And he's like cursing because that's what she likes to do. And so it's a, hey, Dr. Beep, 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 and she's like, excuse me. And he's just going off and intending Rutherford to like, back up, dude, because something's going to happen. And of course, Dr. Tiana loses it and she went all meow, completely scratching the crap out of him. It is like if you had a feral cat that lost control and just started shredding you and, on your face, on your, that's basically what was happening. It was hilarious. This is why I said the cat fight of death. I'm surprised Boimler even survived. So that happened. And then when the orbs and the cubes were fighting, there's Tiana trying to stop because, people were getting hurt. And he's like, I want to help. And she's like, this is even too much for you. And she called him, sorry, Mom, but this is what she said. But in a bleep word, she said, fucko, but in a bleep word. And you could tell that's what she said. But he really wanted to help her, right? Like this was like, screw the pad, screw the whole flip nickname. I want to help. Well, when Mariner had figured out that the ensign had hidden a piece of evidence because she freaked out. And then she had admitted, she's like, I do have powers. They just suck. I don't know how to, basically, she doesn't know how to properly like use them or something. And so this was Mariner's time of like, hey, you can do this. Like, use your powers to stop these two, and it should work. So she's like, okay, I could do that. And sure enough, she absorbs their powers, and she took on too much, which ended up shooting lightning bolts all over the place, which then ended up hitting Boimler because he was trying to help and he was in the way. Well, as all of this is going on, the orbs and the cubes decide to turn into massive, huge, giant, crazy sizes. So they all went out and turn into a giant orb and a giant cube, and they're just fighting each other. Funny, because the cube basically reminded me of the Borg cube. And so I was kind of wondering, I was like, are these cubes like related? Like, did they act like, was their technology taken from the Borg? I don't know. I'm just, maybe that's a far stretch, but I'm just saying. Joe Piscopo. Yes, that was the actor who played the comedian. Let's look on Instagram. All right, still good. So anyway, so yeah, so now everything's just absolutely crazy. The Cerritos is in trouble. And of course, this is where the moment Ollie realizes, oh wait, I've been trying, she was trying to hide who she was, which was being a demigod. Trying to hide that she had powers because she never could use them. But then in her mind, she's realizing, wait, I know what I'm good at, which was engineering. I could actually turn this around. And so they run up to the bridge. They see, Billups, and they, of course, Freeman's like, get off my bridge. But they're like, no, we can do this. And Billups is like, yeah, whatever she had planned about absorbing their energy and then tractor beaming, which Shax was like, tractor beams is for tractoring. So that she's like, no, I could use it for something else, and then it would build up power. When she was talking about this, it reminded me of Picard season 3, which they were using the nebula because it was showing a bunch of power surges, right? And Beverly was able to count because she said it was like a contraction. So she was able to count of when those were going to hit, but one was going to hit to the point that it was going to fall apart, right? So they needed to use that energy in order to absorb into the nacelles, build up power so they can get out of there. This is kind of, I feel like, the same thing. They were taking the energy with the tractor beams from the orbs and the cubes, sucking it in and drawing power into the shields. Could be wrong. I don't know technobabble very well, but I feel that's what they were going for. And I'm just going to run with it until I'm told not to. But yeah, so and of course, what did Ramson say when they became big? They were like, oh, they're going to do something. He's like, and he said something to the effect of like, they don't know what they're doing, right? And it was just, all they wanted to do was fight. And that they didn't care who was right and wrong or even trying to make peace. Now, some of them wanted to make peace, like that little orb they were, interrogating earlier, because he was like, I'm for the peace treating. But they weren't listening to each other, which then brings in the boy cube and the girl orb, and they had a little baby, okay? And and when Ollie figured out how to do it and they stopped him and they all came in, that's, of course, when they realized, oh, there was no murder. This was all a misunderstanding. And then, of course, that's when the son and daughter show up and they're like, yes, we're in love. And what they found in the room was residue that was icky. And unfortunately, Ollie had touched that. So sorry, Ollie. But then they created this little cube. What was his name? Squarerin, right? Squarerin. And then this little, joining the two, I guess we can call them houses, right? Joining those two that would bring them together and have a peace treaty. So then, all's fair, love and war, and there you go. And then happy ending. Why I thought the Boimler stuff was more funnier. It's all that. Right. Great. Cool. Everything was happy dory. There's Tiana doing surgery on Boimler to remove the lightning bolt from his butt. Okay. And you see her, she had a bunch of people there watching. And I think even not Tiana, Tendi was like wiping the sweat off Tiana's face so she can get every little piece. And I guess it was very tricky because it wasn't like a piece of metal, right? It was a lightning bolt. So it was a little bit different. I was very upset, to be honest, that she was not in the red scrub cap thing. I guess they've eliminated that. I don't know, but I wish she was all in red, just like they had in TOS and just like they had Beverly in the Next Generation. I'm wondering if I think even Bashir had that whole red cap thing while they're doing surgery. So slightly disappointed, but it wasn't the end of the world. Okay. And maybe because it wasn't a huge surgery, she was just taking something out of his butt. But because he did get hurt in the way that he did, she was able to basically create this whole new, not technology, but whole new like procedure. And she's all like, I think I'm now finally going to be important in the medical community because of this. And it's all thanks to you, Boimler. That was basically her attitude. And he was like, oh, okay. But instead of him getting the nickname Flip, he got FO, right? So that's where, and then she's like, come to my book club and make sure you bring a pillow. And then she all of a sudden liked him because he did something. He got out of his head, out of the red pad, and just was himself. And the thing is, I think Boimler needs to understand that he can't exactly follow every little thing that alternate Boimler did because, just even eating a different food or saying a different word or doing something alternates that path. And so he's kind of on the same path, but instead of Flip, it was FO, right? And they're still going to the book club, but has a different nickname. So he needs to realize that he needs to be on his own path. It's not going to be exactly the same as the alternate Boimler, but it's going to be the path that he's meant to be on. Okay. And but of course Rutherford didn't realize that and was like, oh, I just need to follow that pad too. And Tenny's like, oh my gosh, they're not going to make it. So at least Boimler's thing came to a happy ending. I'm really hoping this isn't the only Tiana stuff that we see. I love Tiana. She's hilarious. And she's the doctor and she's a cat. So win-win for me, right? But I think with it being the last season, and I'm not really trying to say like Shax and Tiana and them are not, or even Billups are not main characters, but really the main characters were always Mariner, Boimler, Tendi, and Rutherford. So I think those are going to be the huge focus with this final season. So really the other characters like Freeman and Ransom and Shax and Tiana and T'Lyn and Billups, they are just going to be a part of those other stories, but not really have a story of their own. Maybe have a little bit because Freeman is dealing with I don't want to be that alternate Freeman who was on that Starbase 80, right? Ransom has just been kind of going with the flow with everybody. And then, of course, we didn't really see much of Shax. We haven't seen much of Tiana except for this one. T'Lyn had a good moment when, it was the Nanite episode where, we saw that she was fangirling over that vibe tube musician. But that's about it. So I'm curious of what these other episodes are really going to entail and how much more of their story that we're going to get. Okay. So Chuck says, growing beard in each episode. That is a story of its own. And today it's a little bit more, right? I think was it last week where it was just more of a mustache and we saw little specks here and there, but now it's definitely growing in. He's, you know, the alternate Boimler, I kind of felt like he was being like Riker, right? And Boimler was is a fan of Riker, really wanted to be on the Titan, got to be on the Titan, realized it wasn't his place. But in, I think the alternate Boimler kind of took a page out of the Riker handbook and kind of ran with it a little bit, and this Boimler didn't. So there is going to be subtle differences, I think, between the two, more than I think Boimler realizes. So, and on Instagram, Marcy has joined. Hello, Marcy. Thank you for joining. And just so you know, guys, I still don't have a guest for episode 7, 8, or 9, but I do have a guest for the finale, and it is Marcy over at Idle Ride Podcast and Green Shirt. Okay. Love Marcy. She is so much fun. And we figured that since it's the finale, we're going to have lots of laughs and lots of tears. Okay. So, super excited. Cannot wait to have that episode with her. But other than that, I think the only thing that was left was that Ollie got Ollie got to stay on the Cerritos, and she was now going to be in engineering. But she had to stay in the brig for a hot second. So here she is in the brig. She was all like, but I saved everyone. Why am I here? And for Mariner, it's just like, well, you did lie. You did hide evidence. You did, you know, you didn't really follow the rules, you know. And of course, then Ollie was trying to be all like, well, I love the brig and blah, 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 blah. And Mariner's are like, oh, yeah, we're nothing alike, right? Because that was exactly like Mariner. I think that's why Ollie had this story, was to highlight how much Mariner has grown. And of course, the end, Mariner sits there and is trying to chat her ear off, asking her about Zeus and her mom. She mentions Medusa. Now, that was actually a very good question. She asks about the snake. She's like, is it all one snake with multiple heads, or is it multiple snakes? Do they all have names? Like, and I actually tried to think about it. I was like, I think they're different snakes, but I'm not sure. I don't think they really clarified that. So, good question, Mariner. Now I'm going to be thinking about it. But that was it. That was the episode. Had to watch it a few times to try and catch as much as I'm probably missed some stuff. But it wasn't an episode that really grabbed me. Like last week, I really enjoyed Starbase 80. I thought they really put a lot into it. Thing with Freeman and the thing with Mariner and all that stuff. I think they did a really, really good job. And of course, I had a lot of fun because my my friend and coworker Alexa was with me. But there was a lot of good conversations that we got to talk about because of the stuff that we were doing. Here it was, yeah, we got to see the growth of the characters, but it just, I don't know, it just didn't hit as much as the other episodes have. But I mean, that's okay. I mean, I don't know if they knew that they got canceled by this point when they made episode 6. I'm not really sure when they got told. But it's one of those things where I'm kind of just waiting, where I'm all like, it's gonna click, where I'm gonna be like, oh, there it is. I don't think they knew it yet, because I feel like this episode probably wouldn't have happened. I think it's just more of a filler episode. I guess you can say a bottle episode in a sense, because they were just on the ship. They hadn't gone anywhere. So I don't think this would have occurred if they knew they had gotten canceled. I think they would have probably maybe created more stories for Billups or Shax or Tiana or Talin, and the stuff that we're waiting for. Because I feel like they got kind of told a little late. And so then they were trying to, thrust as much in as possible in those last few episodes. But, it is what it is. It's still a decent episode. It's nothing crazy. But so that actually, if I can get to it, that's going to go into our tricorder rating.
My tricorder.
Okay, so I got 15 votes this time. And so the choices was going to be 5 laurels, 4 book clubs, 3 red pads, or 1 or 2 orbs and cubes. I personally am giving it a 3. Not a horrible episode, but just not something that grasped my attention. And actually, everything's kind of across the board. We got 47% for 5 laurels. So there's a good chunk of you guys that really enjoyed this episode. 27% gave it 4 book clubs, and then 13% gave it either 3 red pads or 1 to 2 orbs and cubes. So there was a good handful of you guys that just wasn't feeling it. Okay, so I mean, like I said, I think with them not knowing that they were canceled, I don't think this episode would have happened. And I feel like I'm kind of curious what It's Got Star Trek is going to say about it. They're going to be recording here in a little bit. So maybe I can throw in a voice hail real fast before they do. But they tend to also be, I don't want to say picky, but they also kind of point out some things that are like, oh, this is great, but this might not have worked. I know Trek Movie did that with Tony and Lori. So we definitely enjoy this series, and we're very sad that it's ending. But and so we're always excited to see these episodes. But just depending on how the story goes, it just might not fit very well. But I'm thinking that is it on here. And so I guess we'll just go ahead to my redhead alert. All righty. I want to make sure you guys see all this. There it is. Redhead alert, guys. And this is just a reminder about Trek Talks that is happening on January 18th next year. You're going to get all their information on trektalks.net, and you can follow them on the socials at _underscore talks. There we go. Again, cold medicine. Sorry. And of course, they have a YouTube channel called Trek Talks Telethon. My design, the Be Kind Like Crusher, all the proceeds that I get from this shirt will go to Trek Talks. Have not made one dime, and it's fine. It really is. I'm really hoping, though, that we can really build a good donation to send over there. I just think that any help is appreciated. And of course, as always, it's John Billingsley and Bonnie Gordon who will be hosting this telethon. I hear there's going to be amazing guests. So far, there is a few that they're pretty excited about, and so I'm pretty excited about it. And but yeah, so definitely hit them up. This is going to be happening again on January 18th. All the information is at trektalks.net, and you can follow them on the socials. And here's where you can follow me. I am not only on YouTube. Please like and subscribe if you have not yet done that. But I also have a Patreon. For as low as $3 a month, you become a Patreon member and help support the podcast. I do have some fun posts. And for the Admiral Patreons, you get cool sneak peeks and behind the scenes and, things like that. I want to thank Chuck, who's in the chat with us today, and Engineer Mark for being my Patreon member. So thank you so much. Now, if you can't commit to a monthly gift, then you could also help out Crusher Convo by going to Buy Me a Coffee. You could do a 5, 10, 15, whatever you like, one-time gift. Anything helps. And on socials, I am on Blue Sky, TikTok, Threads, and Instagram. And of course, you can listen to all my audio versions of this podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Good Pods, or wherever you like to hear your podcast. And just like you can buy that Be Kind Like Crusher t-shirt, you can buy all my Crusher Convo merch at TeePublic. And of course, all this information is at crusherconvo.com. Okay. So yeah, guys, this was fun. Thank you, Chuck, for joining me in the chat. And then thank you to Talking About Trek, my mom, and Marcy over on Instagram. We're nearing the end, guys. Episode 7's next week. So we'll see what happens. And of course, that episode is going to be called Fully Dilated. Or at least I hope that's what it's called, because they haven't really been fully accurate. I didn't mean to pun, but they haven't really been accurate with these last 2 titles, because originally it was like Starbase 80 question mark, and then it ended up being Starbase 80 question mark exclamation mark, which isn't a huge deal. But this one was a big one. They were calling it Of Gods and Angels when it was really Of Gods and Angles, which makes more sense. So we'll see what fully dilated means. There's a lot of things running in my head right now with that title. So hopefully we'll find out. We'll all figure it out together on what's happening. But just remember, next week, same time, same place, meet me here, 5 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, and we will talk about the next episode, episode 7. Thank you for, dealing with my congestion and things like that. Hopefully I didn't sound too crappy. I'm definitely feeling a lot better than I did a couple of days ago, so I'm glad that worked out. But as always, everyone, I hope everyone has a happy Thanksgiving, because that is next Thursday, and that's where that episode drops. So this is going to be loads of fun. And as always, live long and prosper, guys. Have a good night. Bye.
Crusher out.